This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Baruchim Abam. Welcome, everybody. We continue in Mishna Daf Hashavua. We're continuing in Hilchos Tzitzis Agutin Chodesh. We're up to Seif Yud Daled. But we just have to finish one Mishna on Sif Yud Gimel. The Shita of the Mechaber is if you put on a Talis Kata and you make a Bracha, then you go to the Shul and you make a Bracha on the Talis Gadol, you have to make a Bracha. The Shita of the Mechaber is Halicha is a Hefsek. We mentioned yesterday the Achronim disagree with that. But the Achronim say you would have to make a Bracha for a different reason, because of Shinoi Makom. The Chayadam is Choishish for the Shita Shinoi Makom is not a Hefsek, and therefore the Chayadam says not to make a Bracha, unless the shul was very far, or you did not have in mind at the time you made the Bracha. Now the Mechaber said, if you're davening in your house, so now you have no Halicha, you have no Shinoi Makom. So then the Mechaber said, Im haya daita mitchila gam al talis gadol v'lo hifsek bein tayim. If you had in mind the talis gadol, and you didn't have a conversation, you didn't talk, b'sichai b'dvarim acherim, you didn't talk, you didn't interrupt with other matters, and it's you don't have to make another bracha. So in this case, there's no halicha, there's no shinoi makom, fine. Says the Mishna of Katan Lamed Hey b'toich beisai, afilu im hatalis katan lavash b'cheder zeh v'hatalis gadol b'cheder acher. Even if the talis katan you put on in this room, and the talis gadol you put on in a different room, there's no issue of shinoi makom. The shinoi makom lo have mecheder lecheder. There's no shinoi makom from room to room. By the way, when it comes to eating, the Bir Halacha later on says that you should be choishish for shinoi makom mecheder lecheder, and therefore you should not leave and the room in the middle of eating. If you did b'diavad, it's okay. Okay, now Rav Shlomo Zalman says that if your derech is to walk about, it's like you had it in mind explicitly. Says the Mishnah Berura, when it comes to talking, it's even one word. Well, it doesn't have to be a whole lengthy conversation. It's even one word is considered a hefsek. So it's like, I was in a place this morning, and the Gabbai who goes around collecting tzedakah, God bless him. But first of all, you're not allowed to collect tzedakah during Chazar Sashatz. You know that? Mishnah Berura says you don't collect tzedakah during Chazar Sashatz. Why everybody dafka collects tzedakah in the most important part of davening? I don't know. Maybe the Yetzer Hara says, when could I be mavatel, the biggest koyach hatfila of the whole day? Oh, let me get them to collect tzedakah. Now, every guy he went to, he had a whole conversation with. Now, this guy is much better off not collecting the tzedakah. But even one word is considered sicha. Mistama, he was talking about Dvarim Ha'im Beruma Shal Olam and how to be matzel different communities all over the world. But it's still Maras Ha'ayin. And anyway, but that's what the Mishnah says. One word is considered. Hefsek Vayin L'el B'Siv Katan Chavches V'Mash Yisam B'Shem Achron Medina. Okay, Sif Yadad. In Pashat Talisai. Let's say you took off your talis. Even if you had in mind explicitly to put it back on, you have to make another bracha when you go back and you're ma'atef with the talis. Now, it's interesting. When does this come up? This comes up all the time. Somebody goes to the Beis HaKisei in the middle of davening. So you took off the talis, you had in mind to put it on, right away, you have to make another bracha. Yom Kippur, you have an hour break, you take off the talis. So there, often there's not only you're taking it off, there's also halicha, and there's also shinoi makom. That's the shita of the Mechaber. The Rama says Haga v'yeshoimrim shein mevarchim. Some say you don't make another bracha. Im haya daita lachzor asativ by, if you had in mind to put it on again. V'yeshoimrim, some say dafka kishenishar alav talis katan. You know when, if you re-put on your talis gadol, you don't make another bracha. That's if the talis katan remained on. V'hachi noyagin. That's the minhag. The minhag is if you continue to wear the talis katan, then you don't make a bracha when you put back on the talis gadol. But back to the question, Erev Shabbos, if you're changing your talis katan, there you're taking off the talis katan, you're not leaving on the talis katan. So then, just according to the simple Rama, it would come out, you would have to make a bracha when you put on, there certainly because it's a completely different beged. Okay, so these are the three shitos in Sif Yadalet. The Mechaber shita is you take off your talis, when you put it back on, you always make another bracha. The Rama says that if you had in mind to put it back on, you don't make a bracha. Some say that only is true if you're wearing the talis katan. It's sort of like a hachra. In other words, the Mechaber said when you take off your talis, you always make a bracha when you put it back on. The Rama says you never make a bracha when you put it back on. And then there's a hachra that if you're wearing the talis katan, you don't have to make another bracha when you put on the talis gadol, and that's the minhag, says the Rama. Let's see the Mishna Berura, tzarech levarich. The first shita of the Mechaber is you would have to make a bracha, afilu nishar olav talis katan, even if the talis katan remained on you. Va'afilum teikav nesatav boy, even if you wrapped yourself in immediately, v'lo yishnim kam time, you were not meshanim at all. Why? I didn't have alicha, I don't have shinoi makam. Ta'apshita gufa hefsek kubazeh. Removing a talis is a hefsek. Va'ayin le'el b'siman says Siv Katan Lamed Av, Masha Kosam L'sham, look what we wrote earlier in Siv Katan Lamed Aleph, where, if you remember, if you took off the first talis before you put on the second one, you would have to make another bracha. The Mishna Berura quoted that the Achronim argue on this. They say taking off is not a hefsek. Later on, Sif Yudalid, the Mechaber says taking off is a hefsek. There, you didn't have in mind at the time of the bracha that you're going to take it off. Here, where you had in mind the time of the bracha, then pshita is not a hefsek. In other words, the reason why there is more of a hefsek in Sif Yudalid over here, the reason why many more Achrayim would say that if you take off a talis here, you have to make another bracha when you put it back on, is because you did not have it in mind when you made the original bracha that you're going to take it off and put it back on. However, if you had in mind when you made the bracha, look, it's Yom Kippur today, I am going to be taking off my talis and putting it back on an hour later, then then many more may agree that you would not have to make a bracha when you put it back on. That's the shita of the Mechaber. Pshita is a hefsek, especially when you did not have it in mind when you originally made the bracha. And on that note, let us see the Bir Halacha. Im Pashat Talisai. Tzarech levarech. Ayin b'Mishna Berura b'masha kosavnu. V'ayin le'el b'Siv Katan Lamed Aleph. Dahainu d'muchach shomein ha'mogen Avram. Dem b'shas ha'bracha yadaita shiv shedem v'yasu b'shen. If at the time you made the bracha, you had in mind you're going to take it off and then put it back on. L'kulei alma ein tzarech lachzor levarech. So this halacha in Sif Yudalid is where you did not have in mind at the time of the bracha. V'zeu lanias daito eitza yutza sheyuchal latzis v'zeu kol hadeos sheyichavin b'shas bracha shemitzarch lepasha sheyachsav yubashenu. This says the Bir Halacha, his personal recommendation over here is always have in mind when you make a bracha on the talis that if you take it off and put it back on, you don't have to make another bracha. Then for sure you won't have to make it. In other words, yes, the Rama already said if you're wearing a talis katan and you take it off, you don't have to make another bracha. And there are those who say you don't have to make another bracha. But L'maisa the Mechaber says you do. So if you want to get biyoytze l'chol hadeos, the best thing to do is to have in mind when you make the bracha. So now this is a fourth kavana, Rabbi Yeager. Kavana number one is you're mechavein. Oh, wow. Kavanah number one is when you make the bracha, you mechaven to the mitzvah to say the daraisa of wearing tzitzis. Number two, you're mechaven that you're wearing tzitzis, laman tizkaru v'asisem es kol mitzvosai, to remember all the mitzvahs. Number three, you're mechaven when you make the bracha on the talis gadol to pater the talis katan. And again, we already made that kavanah for the rest of our lives, but it's better to do it every day. And number four, you should be mechaven, if possible, that if you take off your talis, you're going to put it back on again. Let us begin Sif Katan Lamed Zayin. She'ein mevarchim. Some say you don't make a bracha on the talis. Afilu im be'ez hapshita lo'nisha alav talis katan. According to this shita of the Rama, even if the talis katan did not remain on you, you would not make a bracha when you take off and put on the talis gadol. V'chein pasku ha'achroinim. Wow. The achroinim are makel like the Ramah's first daya without the hachra that you need the talis katan. In other words, we paskin that if you take off your talis gadol and you're not wearing a talis katan and you put on your talis gadol again, you don't make a bracha. V'hatama yeshomrimhu dekivon tebeis hapshita yadaita tekeif lelavshay. Since at the time you took it off, you had in mind to put on right away. V'cheinasa Loi hava hapshita hefsek. Taking it off is not a hefsek. Now, what is the shiur? In other words, how much time later has to elapse for you to have to make another bracha? Says the Shulchan Aruch Harav, many hours. Many hours. So in other words, you have a break on Yom Kippur, you take off your talis, you don't make another bracha when you put it back on again. Bottom line. You go to sleep. Uv'ktsois hashulchan kasav b'havanas dvarav. The Ktsois hashulchan says 2 or 3 hours. And he brings over here that Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman brought a story about the Chazon Ish that he took off his talis on Yom Kippur by the Hafsaka, and the Hafsaka was 2.5 hours. Oh, I daven in a place where they go straight the whole day. Well, the Chazon Ish didn't, but he probably because he started at Alois HaShachar. But anyway, you're allowed to have a break on Yom Kippur. Doesn't say anywhere you're not allowed to have a break. But L'maisa, the Chazon Ish had a suffix after 2.5 hours whether he had to make a bracha on his talis. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to hold it over here for today, and we'll finish up tomorrow. Okay, everyone? A guten chodesh. Have a wonderful day. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.